Hi, my name is Earl Robichaux, and I am the featured artist for the month of March at Art by the Sea Gallery. My theme is Lighthouses of the Pacific Northwest. I have selected 17 images of lighthouses from Crescent City, California to Vashon Island, Washington. Most of these images are small, 8.5 by 12, with some larger, so that I could fit all of the images into my allocated space. Having grown up in Seattle surrounded by water, and later in life taking up sailing, I developed not only a love for these historical structures, but also a healthy respect for their importance as aids to navigation. When getting ready for this video, I couldn't help but miss the question of why these lighthouses are still important. We all know that we have sophisticated GPS systems that help us get everywhere, but like many hikers find out, their smartphones do not have unlimited coverage, and batteries do run out. One always has to be prepared for the unexpected, and that means taking a paper map and a compass with you. Lighthouses have been an integral part of the development and expansion of the United States. My best guess is that at their peak, there were between 700 to 800 lighthouses operating as aids to navigation. It is now estimated that around 65%, or somewhere between 450 to 500 of these lighthouses, are still in operation in one form or another, whether as actual aids to navigation or just operated by parks or other entities. Just like the first lighthouse I will talk about, the Battery Point Lighthouse in Crescent City is now operated by the Del Norte Historical Society as a private aid to navigation. So now I will walk you through my 17 images, but first I will talk a little bit about the Fresnel lens that made these lighthouses successful in helping mariners find their way through the ages. The first image is of a first-order Fresnel lens from the Inchiquith Lighthouse in Scotland. A first-order Fresnel lens would be about 3 feet wide, 12 feet high, and weigh about 5 tons. About half of that weight would come from the glass lenses. The rotating turntable floated in a trough of mercury, allowing it to rotate by a weight-driven clockwork. One of the significant features of these lighthouse designs was to allow a separate signature to the separate spacing of the lenses or the timing of the rotation. The second image is really important, as it not only shows the argon burner, which was patented in 1784, producing a reliable and steady illumination. The other half of this picture shows how the Fresnel lens stacked beams of light on top of each other to produce around 170,000 candle power in a first-order Fresnel lens, projecting the light 21 miles or through the Earth's curvature. I personally believe the scientific importance of the Fresnel lens is lost in history. In actuality, the Fresnel lens is a 2-century-old laser beam. The next slide shows the approximate size comparison between various Fresnel lenses, or sizes. Harbor lights did not need to project their light as far as coastal lighthouses and could be smaller in size. In the early 1900s, there were approximately 760 Fresnel lenses built and installed in the U.S. This last image is of a fifth-order Fresnel lens. And talking about each one of the lighthouse pictures, I'm going to work from south to north, starting at Battery Point Lighthouse, which is this one, and work my way up the coast, and then eventually get to Washington, and then I'll move down the Puget Sound. Battery Point Lighthouse is located in Crescent City, California. This image is also one of the earliest images of lighthouses that I have taken. It was taken with 35mm Fuji Velvia, which accounts for its rich colors. It is a favorite of mine, as it also represents one of my first publications, the cover page of the Keeper's Log, a magazine produced by the U.S. Lighthouse Society. I chose this image of the Cape Blanco Lighthouse because it clearly shows the present second order Fresnel lens. It originally had a first order, but in 1936 it was replaced with this lens, an electric light bulb, which allows it to shine 22 miles. The light is 256 feet above the ocean, and it can easily be seen in Bandon, a little over 20 miles away. It is one of the few active Fresnel lenses in operation in the U.S. currently. Next we come to the Cocoa River Lighthouse. It was built in 1896 to support Bandon's fishing and lumber industry. It is 47 feet high above the water. It originally had a first order Fresnel lens which allowed the light to shine 12.5 miles. Unfortunately, it was decommissioned in 1939, but it remains an active icon of the city of Bandon. The Cape Arago Lighthouse has a rather checkered past. It was originally built to replace the failed Umpqua Lighthouse, which was built on sand and quickly succumbed to erosion. The Cape Arago Lighthouse was intended to be a coastal lighthouse, but because it was built during the Civil War, the government only had enough money for its fourth order Fresnel lens. The choice of Schiff's Island was not a great choice either, as two earlier versions of the lighthouse failed due to the continued erosion of the island. The light was decommissioned in 2006, and in 2008, Congress authorized the transfer of the island and land to the Confederate tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw, with the transfer taking place in 2013. An interesting sidebar is the bare trees on Schiff's Island. They are bare not due to global warming, but from the continued pooping of the cormorants which nested in those trees. Next we have the Umpqua River Lighthouse, which was originally built in 1857 and was among the first group of lighthouses to be built along the Pacific coast. These included the New Dungeness Lighthouse in Washington, the Umpqua River Lighthouse, Point Reyes in California, Santa Cruz, Santa Barbara, and San Pedro, which were built as coastal lighthouses. The lighthouse we see today was built in 1894, and it has one of the few remaining first-order Fresnel lens in operation, and is maintained by Douglas County. I personally think the Umpqua River Lighthouse is one of the more attractive of the lighthouses in Oregon. The Heceta Head Lighthouse also was built in 1894 and is one of the most photographed lighthouses in the United States. I'm sure this is due to its easy access from Highway 101. The reason a coastal lighthouse was built here is owed to one Bruno de Heceta, who found the water to be shallow some distance offshore in the 1700s, a finding confirmed by an 1862 U.S. Coastal Survey. The Heceta Lighthouse is also one of the few remaining active first-order Fresnel lenses in the United States, with the lens 205 feet above the ocean. This is an image of the Yaquina Bay Lighthouse. It was built in 1871 to support the budding trade in Newport, It is famous for having one of the shortest service lives of any U.S. lighthouse, of only 34 months of operation. It had a fifth order Fresnel lens. It now is considered to be the oldest building in Newport and the only remaining wood lighthouse building in Oregon. Cut it out. The Yaquina Head Lighthouse. In 1870s, the Lighthouse Board determined that they needed another coastal lighthouse around Newport, Oregon, and slated to put a lighthouse on Cape Foulweather, some 7 miles north of the present location. However, it is reported that the lighthouse was actually built where it was intended, as the 2 points are similar in nature and often confused on nautical charts. Yaquina Head also has an active first order Fresnel lens that was built in 1873. The tower is 93 feet high and the light is 167 feet above the ocean. The land is maintained by the Bureau of Land Management. Cape Meares Lighthouse, my last Oregon lighthouse, was built in 1890 and is one of the shortest coastal lighthouses on the Pacific coast at 40 feet. Point Reyes and Point Bonita are shorter, both of them in California, only by a couple feet. It was built as a coastal light with a first order Fresnel lens. It was decommissioned in 1964, replaced by electrical light, and sat dormant for several years, subject to vandalism, in which the bullseye center lenses were all stolen. Fortunately, they were all found again and reinstalled, only to have one of them shot out in 2010. In 2014, the U.S. Coast Guard ended its 124 years of service in this location. The lens is still in the lighthouse, but is non-operational. The light is 217 feet above the ocean. The Cape Disappointment Lighthouse is my first Washington lighthouse. The Cape was named by Captain John Meares because he could not tell if the inlet from the Columbia River was actually a river or a bay. So he called the inlet Deception Bay and the headlands Cape Disappointment to reflect his feelings. The Lighthouse Board determined that the mouth of the Columbia River needed a lighthouse due to the number of ships that floundered trying to cross the bar, and became known as the Graveyard of the Pacific. The lighthouse was constructed in 1856 with a first order Fresnel. In 1898, the Lighthouse Board had the first order Fresnel lens replaced with a fourth order when the corresponding North Head Lighthouse, 2 miles away, was built with its first order lens. In the 1930s, the Coast Guard had the black strip painted across the middle to help mariners distinguish between the two lighthouses. The tower is 53 feet and is 220 feet above the ocean. This picture was taken from a popular spot along the breakwater to the north of the lighthouse, but one has to be careful here in bad weather. Well, the Cape Disappointment Lighthouse helped mariners locate the mouth of the Columbia River and helped them cross the bar. Its location made it ineffective for vessels approaching the Columbia River from the north. So the Lighthouse Board approved the construction of the North Head Lighthouse in 1898 with a first order Fresnel lens. The light was automated in 1961, and in 1993 the Coast Guard transferred the lighthouse to the Washington State Parks Department. It is no longer an active aid to navigation. Although I have visited the lighthouse a number of times, this image is still my favorite view of the lighthouse. Point Wilson represents the beginning of my discussion of lighthouses in Puget Sound. Point Wilson Lighthouse is at the northern end of Puget Sound and sits on the western side of the Admiralty Inlet, close to Port Townsend and Fort Worden. It was built in 1879 due to the high ship traffic in Puget Sound, particularly related to lumber. For example, the Port Blakely sawmill at that time was the largest sawmill on the western coast, and in the late 1880s was turning out over 200,000 board feet of lumber a day. The lighthouse has a fourth order Fresnel with a tower height of 46 feet, and the light is 51 feet above the water. The original tower collapsed due to erosion, and the current tower was built in 1914. It is still an active aid to navigation, and there is talk of moving the lighthouse again due to the continued erosion along the sandy point. The Point Wilson Lighthouse is said to be a copy or a duplicate of the Cape Arago Lighthouse in Oregon. The image is a product of using a long lens to compress the distance between the lighthouse and Mount Baker on the other side of Puget Sound and in the Cascade Range. I didn't artificially increase the size of Mount Baker. The land above the lighthouse is actually Whidbey Island, the other side of Admiralty Inlet. Point No Point Lighthouse is the oldest lighthouse in Puget Sound, a fact I did not know until doing this video. The point was named by Lieutenant Charles Wilkes in 1841 because from a distance it appeared to be a very large point extending into the sound, but upon getting closer really was not much of a point at all. The truth is the sound kind of bends here to the south. The lighthouse was built in 1879 with the fourth order Fresnel, which it has today. The tower is only 30 feet high with only 27 feet above the sound. Currently, the U.S. Lighthouse Society has its offices there, a fitting ending to this historical building. It continues to be an aid to navigation. The Mukilteo Lighthouse, a small but gorgeous lighthouse that I was fond of visiting, it sits in the small community of Mukilteo, right next to the ferry terminal that takes one to Whidbey Island. In 1906, the Everett Morning Tribune reported in bold letters that the lamp is lit in the new Mukilteo Lighthouse, the best lighthouse in the entire Puget Sound. And I believe it. The tower height is 30 feet and the light is 33 feet above the water. It is still an active aid to navigation and is managed by the city of Mukilteo. The West Point Lighthouse image here is perhaps one of my most favorite of the many lighthouse images I have captured over the years. As in many things, it pays to be patient and wait as I did for the setting sun. Of course, I was helped again by the 35mm Fuji Velvia film, which has unique ability to hold better the strong highlights of the lighthouse beam and provides the rich blue and yellows. West Point is perhaps one of the busiest points for water traffic in the Puget Sound, with boats traveling in and out of Elliott Bay and Seattle. The structure here is virtually identical to the Point No Point Lighthouse and was built in 1881. It has a fourth order Fresnel. It was automated in 1984 and remains an active aid to navigation. Alki Point was, for me, close to where I used to live in Seattle, but hard to get a good picture. Alco Point marks the southern inlet to Elliott Bay, and for a long time, local residents of Alki kept a lantern lit to mark its position. Finally, the Lighthouse Board decided to build a tower there in 1913 with a fourth order Fresnel. The tower is 37 feet high and the light is 39 feet above the water. It remains an active nave to navigation. Point Robinson Lighthouse, the last on my lighthouse tour, is the favorite of many photographers that are willing to make the trek to visit the little one. One has to take the Vashon ferry from South Seattle, and then there is the long drive through Vashon to Murray Island. However, on a clear day, one is rewarded with nice images of Mount Rainier as a backdrop to the cute little lighthouse, which is almost identical to the Alki Point Lighthouse. Point Robinson was built in 1913, and it marks the turning point in Puget Sound for boat traffic going from Tacoma to Seattle. It has a fifth order Fresnel that was automated in 1978. It remains in active navigation. So that is it on my lighthouse tour.